In this problem here, we're going to be using what's called factor by grouping. We use factor by grouping when we have 4 terms in our polynomial, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there is no common factor amongst any of the terms. To begin factor by grouping, we're going to start by grouping our first 2 terms, the 12x cubed and the 2x squared, and our last 2 terms, the minus 30x and the minus 5. Notice how I've included that minus in this second group. Now, what you'll notice is in this first group there is now a common factor amongst both of those terms. That being, with the 12 and the 2, I could take out a 2, and the x cubed and the x squared, I can take out an x squared. Now, what does that leave me with? Well, when I take 2 away from 12, I'm left with a 6, and when I take an x squared out of x cubed, that leaves me with an x. Now, when I take a 2 out of the 2, it leaves me with a 1, and I take 2 x's out, I'm also left with a 1. So there is nothing there except for a 1. We think of that as a placeholder. Now, in the second group, what can I take away? Well, I notice that they both have a minus sign, so I'm going to want to take that minus sign out. What about the 30 and the 5? I could also take out a 5. Now, what does that leave me with? Since I'm factoring out a negative, that's going to change both of my signs. So when I take 5 out of 30, I'm left with a 6, and the x is left in there. And when I take out the minus 5, well, I take away everything. Again, just like here, I'm left with a positive 1. Positive because I factored out a negative. When I factor out a negative, it changes every sign. Now that I've taken out the GCF in both groups, what I'll notice is now there is another common term. That being the 6x plus 1 here and the 6x plus 1 there. I'm again going to factor that out of both of these terms. So when I take out the 6x plus 1, what's left from that first group? Well, if I take a 6x plus 1 out, what's left there? Just a 2x squared. Well, from the second group, when I take that 6x plus 1 out, what's left? A minus 5. This right here is going to be my final answer. Again, you can check by fooling everything together. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is try one on your own. The problem you're going to try on your own is going to be 8x cubed minus 64x squared plus x minus 8. What I want you to do is right now pause the video and try this on your own. Once you're done, hit play again, and I'm going to go through the explanation of how to do this problem here. Alright, hopefully you finished. So here's our problem. 8x squared minus 64x squared plus x minus 8. Again, using grouping, 4 terms, no GCF amongst all of them. So let's start by grouping our first 2 and our second 2. Now, from here, I have an 8 and a 64, so I can take out an 8 there, and an x cubed and an x squared, so I can take out an x squared from both. What does that leave me with? Well, took out the 8, so I just have a 1, and I took out 2 x's, so I'm just left with an x. From here, I've taken out an 8, so I'm left with a minus 8, and I've taken out both x squareds. As I look at the second group, there isn't a GCF amongst both of them, but they do share a common term. What is that going to be? They both have a 1. So I can take out a 1 from both, leaving me again, take 1 out of there, still left with an x. Take 1 out of here, still left with a minus 8. Again, factored out something from both of my groups, and I'm left with a common term here, that x minus 8, which I will then factor out from each group. In this first group, take it out, I'm left with an 8x squared. take it out from here, and I'm left with a plus 1, and I'm completely factored.